The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the show, everyone, where we explore how empathy, connection, and purpose transform business from the inside out. I'm Stephen, as always, with my co-host, Mike. A McKinsey report found that companies that redesign work models for agility and adaptability see 30% higher performance compared to peers. And as artificial intelligence continues to reshape how we work, the question is certainly not whether change will come, but how leaders can create models that empower both human and AI teammates to thrive together. Mike, tell everyone about Liza, our guest today.
Yeah, we definitely have an expert in this area to talk to us today. So yeah, our guest today is none other than Liza Adams. She's an AI advisor, go-to-market strategist, as well as being the CEO of Growth Path Partners. Now, with over 20 years as a senior marketing executive at Smartsheet, Juniper Networks, Pure Storage, and Encompass Technologies, Liza brings a really deep expertise in leading through technological shifts, which, as we know, are happening rapidly in our day. As well, she is recognized in 2024 as one of the 50 CMOs to watch and was a Pavilion Fractional Advisor of the Year Finalist. And through Growth Path Partners, she guides executive teams, go-to-market leaders, and investors in building a human AI organization that will really achieve measurable performance improvements, which we are so keen on hearing more about that today. As well, her people-first, AI-forward approach helps teams unlock what is possible through applied AI workshops, strategic advisory, as well as her popular newsletter, which you may want to sign up for this. The popular newsletter, Applied AI in GTM. So Liza, we are so delighted to have you with us today. Welcome to our show.
So happy to be here, Mike. Thank you for having me, Stephen.
This is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to this one. So Liza, you've led transformations at multiple companies and been in the middle of them during times of major technological change. And what was the moment or was there a moment when you realized like traditional work models would no longer be enough for the future, and especially where we're going with AI?
Yeah, when people talk about transformations, then I really feel my age, right?
Yeah.
I feel like
I've been feeling that a lot lately too. I'm like, oh man, what? How many years? How many decades?
I know, but it's a really good time to be alive, right? Like I've gone through internet, cloud, mobile, social, SaaS, and then now AI, right? So I feel I have felt the whiplash all the way through. But transformation truly has been a common thread in my career. As they say, there is the only constant is change, right? And especially in the era of AI, I do believe that this is going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest transformation that we've ever gone through, and the fastest. And by far, I would say that it's probably going to be the hardest. And I think what's going to be driving it, I think about it in 4 different dimensions. If I could just, typify it and compare it with the others. Like the first dimension is really this mindset and behavior shift from thinking about AI as a question and answer machine to one that is a thought partner. That's a very different kind of thinking, right? There's transformation that happens there. The other one is when, many companies today think about it as a productivity tool. So primarily to make things go faster. But I believe that we should push its potential to go beyond productivity into actually improving quality and then beginning to reimagine work, actually innovating. Because if we're stuck in productivity and making things go faster, we're almost painting a picture where we can see how it can, replace people. But when you think about improving quality and reimagining work, it's a little harder to replace people. The third dimension is really around this mindset shift from using AI as a tool to building and guiding AI as teammates, and then ultimately orchestrating AI systems. And then the last dimension is this movement from org charts to work charts. So org charts are what we know today, very hierarchical in nature, very siloed departments. And then work charts is when those silos dissolve, the hierarchy flattens, and then now we have a combination of human and AI experts that work together for the greater good. And that greater good is a business outcome rather than specific KPIs by department. So, that I believe is what's so different about AI, because you can think about the transformation in many different dimensions. And those are just 4 off the top of my head.
It's a good framework for sure. So, Liza, one thing I wanted to maybe shift to or talk a little bit more about is your work with innovative work models. And there's a lot that could be said in terms of this, but I'm sort of curious, in terms of your definition between what an innovative work model is, what distinguishes it, I guess, from some of the legacy approaches that may have been used in the past.
Yeah, and those 4 dimensions begin to show what an innovative work model is, right? Mm-hmm. Because, as people have said, we can't begin to reimagine the future by simply automating the past. Mm-hmm. So, we could certainly make things go faster, but we have to be careful. We can't just automate anything and everything, because we could be automating a broken process. Right. That's not good, right?
Which we're no doubt going to be doing, because so many of the processes out there are broken. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Mike, just to go back to your question, when I think about an innovative work model, it's literally breaking what we have today, either breaking what we have today or automating what works, right? And to my point earlier, the silos will come down, the hierarchy will flatten, because actually, if you think about our customers don't care about our silos. They don't care about sales, marketing, CS, engineering, HR. They just need a connected experience from beginning to end, or through the entire life cycle, right? The infinity loop or the bow tie, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And I think a work model that's innovative is one that aligns with what the customer truly wants, and we make all of the complexities, invisible to them. Yeah. So that's kind of how I think about it. And I also think about the fact that AI will help us do that, because AI doesn't care about our silos. AI doesn't care about our titles and hierarchy. And neither does the data that is shared across the different functions. So when we begin to innovate, what's actually interesting is I've worked with a number of companies, and people always say, "Oh, Liza, who's the most innovative? Or is it the big companies? Is it the ones with a lot of money, a lot of technology?" And what I found, what's interesting, is the ones that have the least number of resources and the smallest budgets are the ones who are innovating the most, because they have no choice but to reimagine work to be competitive in the market, right? They don't have the money to hire a lot of people. They don't have the resources to buy a lot of tools, those types of things. So I am finding that, these smaller, more nimble companies are really reimagining work. And sometimes the larger ones have a lot more bureaucracy, ingrained processes, a lot of politics, and it's a lot harder to break those down to begin to reimagine the workflows.
Yeah, I think
right? All that red tape isn't there.
That's right.
Yeah. Being nimble, I think it's just so huge with this AI transformation, right? Because if you're Tulio he mentions, we can't use like these industrial revolution kind of practices of these hierarchies in now this kind of environment that's really, it's a very nimble, AI is a very nimble tool. And what was it, like 70% or something of AI implementations fail. And we know like 30% of those or so were self-sabotage because people are not wanting to have their jobs replaced. But that other huge chunk, a lot of it is really, we're using these old sort of paradigms of how business is structured, right? And AI, like you said, it doesn't care, right? It's gonna probably flow like water wherever it can, and if it can't, that's that's not an advantage for a business if you can't move fluidly.
And in these transformations, AI, the technology itself is not the hardest part. It's humans. It's us that's really hard, right? We have passions, we have, motivations, we have politics, all sorts of things, right? And truly, to adopt AI, it is a mindset and behavior shift. In any kind of transformation, we have to meet people where they are and bring them along. And we know that in AI, you have a pretty wide spectrum. You have one end of the spectrum where you have people who are so fearful that AI will, take their jobs, that it paralyzes them. On the other end of the spectrum, we have people who are leaning in so hard using multiple AIs, but don't know how to use it responsibly. And then you have everybody else in between. So this whole notion of AI literacy, meeting people where they are, being super compassionate and graceful in how we lead people through change is, I believe, going to be really, really important. We can't just come in one day and say, here's your ChatGPT, your Gemini, and your Claude, have at it, and expect transformation to happen. What needs to happen is, as they say, the most expensive AI investment is the one that people don't know how to use well. Yeah. So the upskilling and reskilling of the people, meeting them where they are, bringing them along, giving them the space to learn, being empathetic about where they are in that journey, reprioritizing their work so that we don't just add AI learning on top of their 120 to 150% oversubscribed work. So all sorts of things, more on the human side versus the technology side needs to be considered.
Yeah, agreed.
When we say like the human AI organization, the optimist in me here is like maybe evolved leadership. This isn't about replacement, it's about augmentation. But the pessimist in me says business consciousness is woefully evolved and that someone is going to say, maybe they'll say human AI organization in one breath while just steamrolling the humans, seconds later. But I do feel like the EQ in AI, if you can, too much letters there, I think, but the emotional intelligence in AI is going to challenge those folks in a lot of ways, I think, even if there are resistance, because AI, I feel like a lot of times it does have a pretty strong EQ. Do you agree? It's going to, where do you fall in that? Are you optimist or pessimist in all this?
Well, I want to say that I have a balanced view of this, right? So when you mentioned human plus AI organizations, the way I think about it is that when you put humans and AI together, I believe that we have complementary superpowers. Mm-hmm. And that we also have the ability to overcome each other's weaknesses. So as an example, and I'm going to use myself as a human being as the example, my memory is not that good. I don't remember a lot of things. And as a human being, I'm also very much affected by my environment. So I get sick, I get frustrated, I get overwhelmed. I worry about my aging mother in Manila. I just dropped off my daughter 2 weeks ago in college, and I think about her all the time. AI, on the other hand, remembers a lot more things than I do. It's been trained on 85+% of the internet, and it's not affected by its environment. We could be having a typhoon, a flood, and it still continues to crank out the work. So however, AI doesn't have a moral compass, right? So I have to guide AI to ensure that it knows right from wrong. I have to give it context. I have to give it objectives and all sorts of things. So when you put me and AI together, I think about it as 1 + 1 = 3, because we are truly helping each other become better as a whole. On the perspective of jobs, I also do say that, although things have changed and we no longer have, and we have lost jobs over the course of many decades, although we no longer have elevator operators and stenographers, we now have software developers and social media managers, right? 60% of the jobs that we have today did not exist in 1940. So now it's going to happen again. I do believe that we will lose jobs. However, new jobs will crop up and new jobs will evolve. I think the biggest question is the pace, because I think the pace is a lot faster, because AI is able to use the, much of the technology that's been developed, and it rides on top of it. The fiber optic networks are on the ground already. Wi-Fi is already in place, right? We don't have to build those things. AI just rides on top of it. So, I do believe that we will adapt, because we are the most adaptable creatures on this planet. The question is, how quickly can we upskill and reskill people, and how quickly can we create these new jobs?
Yeah.
To scale it responsibly, like what kind of systems or processes do you recommend for building, not only high performance teams, but ones that, include both human, AI, and maybe are more consciously evolved as well?
Yeah. So I've helped teams build these human plus AI organizations. So I'll ask you to visualize an org chart for me, where you have the people as boxes on the org chart, and the people actually build and train distinct AI teammates. So if you've got like a content team, marketing team, you might have a content topic ideator. You might have a persona builder, right? And those are distinct AI teammates that that content manager might build. And it's trained on the brand tone and voice. It's trained on a persona. It's trained on the writing style, all sorts of things, right? So you can imagine that, every single person in your organization might have, 2 or 3 AI teammates that they build to help them do their job. Well, that's great, because they can help each individual, but without sharing those teammates, it becomes simply a productivity tool for the human being, just for me, or just for you, Stephen, or just for you, Mike, right? Because it helps you do your job. I think the scaling of this requires us to share our teammates, to be able to expand that knowledge and to share it across not just the team, but maybe even across organizations. So that's one part of scaling it. The other part of scaling is we begin to take these teammates and string them along in a workflow. So, we're all marketers here. Like, let's just say a integrated campaign. You might have a content creator AI talking to a webinar AI, talking to an email invitation creation AI, talking to a social post AI. They're all connected together. A human being orchestrates these 4 AIs together into a workflow, checks its work. It's basically the human in the loop. And then now you've got an orchestrated system that scales and has a huge impact to the business. It's not just for Liza, it is now, the results of that integrated campaign. So I think that is one of the key things missing today in the world of AI, when that MIT study said that 95% of AI pilots don't yield or yield 0% ROI. I think a huge part of that is that we've not been able to take AI and infuse it in specific workflows. And these workflows are not just automating what we have, but are beginning to reimagine a new way of working.
Yeah, it feels
So
very
these are
much piecemeal right now. I think with the AI implementation, very, like you mentioned, kind of siloed. Go ahead, Mike.
No, and I was going to say too, going back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, is for the humans to be okay with, doing that, right? So, for example, using something like a Lindy AI, somebody might really enjoy a component of their work, right? Like maybe it's writing those invitations, or maybe it's writing the blogs or the content. I think where the struggle is maybe those humans kind of letting go of that task and being willing to allow the AI to be inserted into the workflow. But I had another question for you, Liza, with regards to like the daily rituals or the processes that teams will go through. In the intro, we sort of mentioned your approach of people first, kind of AI forward. What are some other, I guess, rituals or some other processes that teams should look at in their day-to-day to try to insert more of this AI into their workflow?
Yeah, and it goes beyond. It even starts earlier than infusing AI in your day-to-day work, because we absolutely need to understand the motivations and fears of the human being. I generally start with just understanding that, like survey your employees, survey what are their thoughts about AI, how are they using it, how often do they use it, what tools, what are their concerns about AI, where do they believe AI can help them, what are their fears. And I think when we have a better understanding of where the human being comes from, we can better guide them along this transformation journey. I always use my husband as an example. He's a published author of young adult sci-fi novels. And his name's Mike. Mike hesitates. A lot of Mikes.
Sounds like a great guy.
Great guy, Mike. But he hesitates to put his work into AI because he fears that it will ingest his ideas, and then somebody else or AI itself will be able to write his next series of novels. But at the same time, he embraces AI from the perspective of robotics, because he is a right leg amputee due to childhood cancer. So he believes that AI can change the way people work and live, especially those with disabilities. So we can begin to see that in a single human being, the acceptance of adoption of AI varies, even by use case in a single person, right? Yeah. So, we might have a team of, 20, 100 people. We might know how they work. We might know them super well in the work environment, but we don't know what's happening in their personal lives, and that impacts their view of AI. So this whole notion of being super empathetic and deeply understanding, the fears and motivations and passions of people is going to be important at the very beginning, because we gotta understand that before we begin to say, all right, infuse it in your daily work. Right. And when you start asking the team to infuse it in their daily work, a huge part of this is showing them what's possible with AI, not in general, but by function and by role. Like I can't show a product marketer a field marketing use case, and I can't show a digital marketer a marketing ops use case. They have to be able to relate to it and see how it can help them in their work.
That makes a ton of sense. I know I can see how those would be some pretty common pitfalls that they would fall into when they're trying to introduce this into their system.
Yeah, and another. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to go back to like that thought of your husband with that. It's kind of like common fear, I think, is that, ideally AI isn't just about speeding up things or automation. It'll free up humans to do more meaningful work. But I think you really do see the biggest backlash, or the one that hits the soul most, is when it feels like it's replacing that meaningful work that people have done, right? And so I know with us, like in the marketing side with our platform, AI CMO, we're definitely really focusing on trying to help pull that meaningful work out of people. But I totally understand when you're talking about empathy. It's really gets down to that thing that people identify as being very meaningful to them a lot of times. That's where it's really painful in that process. I totally understand, why someone can have those two positions at the same time.
Well, and Stephen, it's such a tricky balance, right? Because, what's important to you may not be important to somebody else. And, I try to walk this line, but it's really hard to walk the line because the variation is pretty wide.
Yeah.
So what I generally say is, regardless of how you feel about AI, wherever you are in that spectrum, AI literacy is foundational. Because when we are literate, when we understand AI to the best of our abilities, we can make better decisions for ourselves, our families, our teams, our businesses, and society. When we don't understand, then we risk being influenced by others who may not hold the same values as us. Mm-hmm. So at a foundational level, all I ask of people is to just understand, and then they can make their own decisions. Right now, they have more of a leg to stand on to make the right decisions for themselves.
Yeah, 100%. Right, you got to have that knowledge in order to really build an understanding, and then from there you can act. Right, otherwise you can't really act without having that knowledge. I think that's a great discussion point.
Yeah, and we were talking about our kids. Many of them are in college, right? And I know that there are factions right now. There are educators and guardians and parents that believe as AI is a form of cheating or a shortcut. And then there's another faction that believe that AI is actually helping our kids develop critical thinking, and it's going to be foundational for them to find work once they're out of college, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you don't know AI, we could be matriculating our children to be unemployable. So there's these two factions, and until people truly understand AI, you could be swayed by one end or the other without truly, deeply understanding the implications to not just us, but the children.
Yeah. Tough time to be in college right now. Okay, we've got a question from the audience here. So this is from Tulio, our producer here. He's wanted to chime in. I think part of the challenge is also how AI gets integrated. What do you think about treating it like a post-M&A integration to allow room for proper synergy and planning? In the end, it is not a tech adoption. It's an organizational design change requiring more autonomy.
Yeah, I wholly agree. And this is part of that framework that I mentioned earlier, right? That when we simply use AI as a tool and we only use it for our individual purposes, then it just becomes that, right? It becomes almost like a calculator or an Excel spreadsheet or a word processor because it just helps with individual tasks. But when we integrate it into a workflow, actually change the way work happens and let it flow. I don't know which one of you said it, let it flow like water, right? Mm-hmm. And not be constrained by, titles and hierarchy and silos. Then I think that is where we get the biggest impact. I would actually say that this goes beyond M&A. And this is rethinking workflows beyond how we rethink workflows with M&A, because in M&A, you still end up with a hierarchical infrastructure. You still end up with a siloed organization. You might take the best of the best or the most synergistic people, and then you let go of some, but the end result is still the same structure as before. I believe AI will force us to rethink that. And when I say AI will force us to rethink that, I'm kind of, saying that tongue in cheek. I think the market will force us to rethink the workflows, because there will be companies that will reimagine work and they will have a competitive advantage.
Right.
And and the customers will love that, right?
Right.
So now it will force the other companies to do something different, in their workflows, so that they can compete. Otherwise, they're at a severe disadvantage compared to the others that have now reimagined work.
Yeah. I mean, going back to your point a little bit earlier about, the more nimbler, lighter organizations being able to, compete or sort of punch above their weight class, they're the ones that will take over market share. And I'd say this is also an area where, AI will put your culture to the test. So I think, culture and even some of the pillars that we talk about with conscious capitalism will, if they're all there, AI will be like a force multiplier, versus if you have a bad culture or all these different silos, it'll really shed the light on, areas that, the organization is really broken in. And, competitors are, even like the small competitors, like you said, will, take market share because they'll be able to move, much more quickly and stay connected with their customers. So, Liza, I was actually kind of curious if maybe you wouldn't mind sharing a real world example or, multiple examples of where you saw a measurable impact, right? So can you maybe give us like a real world example where shifting to a more innovative work model delivered a measurable impact?
Yeah. So AI search is one of these areas, right? So, the way people search is now changing. The buyer behavior is now changing, right? We are beginning to see the shift away from just typing in a couple of keywords, project management. Now the prompt or the inquiry is like, I lead a global marketing team with 150 people. We're geographically dispersed. We have highly integrated campaigns. We need a single source of truth, and we need to manage our integrated campaigns in near real time. What are some of the best project management solutions out there? Evaluate them on these 5 criteria and give me a rating for each of those criteria on a scale of 1 to 5. Plus overall, give me your rationale, and given our situation, make a recommendation for the top solution and tell me why.
And in marketing, this used to be a keyword phrase of like, 2 or 3 words about something. This is like, 50 words. And now we've got to make sure at some point our search ad is going to be involved in this process. And I think Google's, working on that. So it's ChatGPT, but that's the reality. Yeah, the search environment is changing. That muscle is changing in us right now.
That muscle is absolutely changing, and I've always said this, that now AI forms an opinion before a human being does, right? Because you just saw the difference between those 2 inquiries. Best project management software versus this whole context, and AI spits out a table with the ratings and the pros and cons and then the recommendation. Like, it actually formed an opinion about each one of these brands and made the recommendation based on what the end user wanted. So that in and of itself begins to, challenge traditional ways of thinking about search. How do we address that workflow, right? Because now we're not just optimizing for keywords and backlinks and things like that. We are now optimizing for intent, for context. We need to deeply understand the customers, anticipate what those questions are at the top, middle, and bottom of the funnel. Once we understand those questions, we need to create content that directly answers those questions. We need to make it so relevant that AI would actually serve us up. We need to ensure that content are in different sources, like different watering holes, not just in our website. It needs to be, in publications, in communities, in customer reviews, even employee reviews, right? Because AI is going to look everywhere for signal, and it's going to try to see patterns. And if the response is pretty consistent that let's say, Zero company, it's really good for XYZ. Then, and it sees that customer reviews are saying that, publications are saying that, communities are saying that, then it's going to say, I highly recommend this company for XYZ. If it doesn't say that and there's no agreement, there's not a pattern, then it's just noise. And if AI doesn't understand what we're best for, what we're good for, it's going to make it up.
Yeah.
And whatever it makes up may or may not be in our best interest. So, you know, I'm sharing that from an outside-in perspective, because that is an absolute change in customer behavior, customer buyer's journey, that we as marketers and as businesses that serve marketers need to think about. How do our workflows change as a result of that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and as well, like what components of the workflows should remain. So like, for example, we're advising our clients when it comes to still being found, you still have to do the foundational elements, right? Answer people's questions. And I think it's going to very much highlight the ones that have and the ones that haven't. And so we're going to see a direct impact, from that. So I think it's important to continue to make that investment so that we're answering people's questions. It's just it's the same business principles of thinking about your customer, answering their questions that are top of mind. What are their concerns and emotions that they're feeling, and building that connection, right? So it's still doing all those same things, just in a much quicker way now, I think.
Yeah. And if you think about it, it's not just about being visible in AI's responses. It's also about the sentiment. Are we being put in the right light? And the last thing is, are we being recommended for the right things? Because we don't want to be recommended for the wrong things. We don't want to be recommended for all things. So like any of those are bad, right? So it's a combination of visibility, sentiment, and being recommended for. And in the past, we never had to think about all three of those in combination. And then now we do. But, although the amount of traffic coming back to our websites, is decreasing as a result of AI, there are studies, and I know, I'm working with a bunch of CMOs, traffic's decreasing, but we know that the conversion rate is higher. So if we can figure out how to, manage the workflows and really address this well, the impact is pretty significant, because whatever clicks we earn back to our website, conversion rates are going to be anywhere from like 4 to 4.5 times greater as a result of AI.
Yeah. Feels like we're getting people through that customer journey possibly faster, versus the older process of search and things like that going through. I want to move on to the question we usually ask every guest, is some form of this, and I may have a follow-up to this, but it's, what role does love play in business?
Yeah. So I've always said people first, AI forward, right? And that simply means that in every decision that we make that includes technology, that we have to keep the people in mind. And the term love is not used as much in business as we use in our personal life, but there's a lot to unpack in that word, right? Love can include empathy, it includes trust, it includes compassion, and all sorts of things. And for us as marketers, we're in the business of earning love, and giving love, right? And we talked about the importance of these processes and these systems and ensuring good product market fit. I actually have this 2x2 matrix where one dimension is product market fit. So how well do we address a customer's problem? The other dimension is trust. So you can have exceptional product market fit, but if people don't love you, they don't trust you, it's not going to go anywhere, right? There are many startups that are in this category. They have awesome products, but no one knows them, no one trusts them yet, and you have to build that that trust. And then there are also high trust companies that are out there, but they've lost product market fit. So that's a whole different scenario. Where you want to be is in the top right-hand corner where you have exceptional product market fit and your customers love you.
And do you think, like, what role can AI play in building that love?
Oh, AI is an amplifier. It's an amplifier of what's there, right? So if people love you, they talk about you in a positive light, whether it's in customer reviews, in communities, in publications, in testimonials, AI will find that and it will amplify that love, right? Like, they've said in the past, perception is reality. Moving forward, the AI response is reality. I kind of believe that, right? Because AI is looking everywhere.
Very persuasive.
Yeah, it's going to look everywhere. If it finds love, it will elevate love. If it finds hate, it will elevate hate. So I think that very human aspect of business will be under a microscope. And, I have actually told people, be an amazing human being first, and then be an amazing business person in the era of AI. So that's my take on that.
Yeah.
Exclamation point.
For sure. Liza, our time today just flew by. I can't believe we're already at the end of our show. So for our listeners that do want to learn a little bit more about your work and get connected with you, where should they go?
Yeah, the best place is LinkedIn, actually. So, look me up. It's Liza Adams. And then my website, which is growthpath.net, is also a place where you can find me.
Liza, thank you for joining us today. And to our audience, thank you for listening as well. If today's conversation sparked some new ideas about the future of work, it certainly did for me. I was taking notes while we were going along here.
Feverishly.
But please share it with someone who would benefit. And until next time, we'll see you on the next Bliss Business Podcast.